This video is covering the OCR Biology A specification, topic 612 on patterns of inheritance, and this time we're focusing on epistasis. Epistasis is when two different genes may contribute to the phenotype for a characteristic. Whether or not you have one gene will determine whether the other one is able to be expressed or whether you would even notice if it is being expressed or not. That's easier to explain when you look at some examples. These images all show celebrities who have a particular kind of phenotype called a widow's peak. What that means is their hairline has a pointy bit at the front instead of being rounded all the way along. Now that is determined by the expression of a particular gene. However, if somebody has the gene for widow's peak and they also have a gene which means that they're not going to have any hair for whatever reason, then whether or not they have the gene for widow's peak is actually going to be hidden. You're not going to know about it. So the effects of the widow's gene allele is going to be masked by the presence of the gene that controls whether or not they've even got hair on their head. The colour of the fur for Labradors is also an example of epistasis. Now, Labrador retrievers can be black or brown or yellow, or what we call golden retrievers. But that actually depends on two different genes impacting each other. The gene that determines colour, we'll call it the B allele. The capital B is dominant, and if Labradors have a B allele on this particular gene, it means that that is coding for black fur. The recessive version of that allele gives them brown fur, which means that they can only have the recessive brown fur if they are homozygous recessive, so they have two lowercase b's, but they can be black if they are homozygous dominant or heterozygous. However, fur colour is also determined by another gene, what we call the epistatic gene. If the puppies have inherited on a different locus two recessive E's, then that means that the pigment for the fur colour is not going to be made. So that means no fur pigment. If there is no pigment, then it doesn't matter whether the first allele was a capital B or a lowercase b. If there's no fur pigment, then you only notice the pigment in the skin, which means those retrievers are going to be yellow. They're going to be golden retrievers. If, however, in the epistatic gene, it's either homozygous dominant or heterozygous, then the pigment will matter and the fur colour will be determined by the allele for the B's, capital B or a lowercase b. Bearing that in mind, consider these three possible genotypes for Labradors. Take a moment, pause if you need to think about it. Which of those following genotypes will be the one for a yellow Labrador retriever? A, B, or C? Pause and then press play again when you think you know the answer. The combination of B's would determine whether it's going to have black or brown fur, but if they have the epistatic gene as the homozygous recessive genotype, then the black or brown won't matter. It's definitely going to be yellow, which means the combination, the genotype, which will give you the genotype for a yellow Labrador retriever, is A. While we're on this, let's have a look at what the other two would be. Because for the epistatic gene, the other two do have one dominant E as well, then it's worth looking at the B's. With this first example, it's two lowercase b's, and lowercase b's are brown and they are recessive, which means this puppy would have brown fur, and the other one has homozygous dominant alleles. The dominant one is the black fur, so this puppy is going to have black fur. Let's try a question for the next level up. Imagine that you have two parent Labradors. Both of them are heterozygous for both genes. So the father and the mother are both heterozygous for both genes. Draw a Punnett square similar to dihybrid inheritance because you're looking at the inheritance of two different genes at the same time. Draw a Punnett square to show the dihybrid inheritance and the genotypes and phenotypes of the offspring of these two parents. Take a few minutes, draw that out. Pause the video while you are doing that. Once you have done it, press play again and have a look at the next screen to see if your answers are correct. Remember that when you do dihybrid inheritance and you are looking at the inheritance of two different genes together, then both of those two genes are going to show reduction division. Each gamete has to have at least one of each gene in there. So there has to be an E and a B in each possibility for a gamete, and then you just have a look at what the possible combinations of gametes are. If you've got this correct, what you should find is that you have a ratio of 9 black to 3 brown to 4 yellow retrievers. The easiest way to do these is to first of all look at the combinations for the epistatic genes. This is an example of recessive epistasis, which means it's the recessive combination that means the other one isn't relevant. So if I have the recessive combination, as I do here with these four, then it doesn't matter what the B alleles are, it's definitely going to be golden. Once you know that all of the others are either black or brown, then you can ignore the E's and just focus on the B's to look for normal monohybrid patterns. Is it dominant homozygous, heterozygous, or recessive homozygous? Hopefully that will now help you to work out any kind of patterns of inheritance related to epistasis.